start. They're off in the Preakness.
Welcome to another Preview Live, America's Best Racing Preakness Preview Live show. I'm Joy Taylor, joined always by Jonathon Kinchen. Jonathon, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm hanging out in Baltimore, surprisingly and kind of embarrassingly. This is my first Preakness. I've been to like 12 Derbies, 12 Belmonts, but for whatever reason, a little 2 weeks in between, I've never made it. So this will be my first one.
Well, that's very exciting. That's awesome. Congrats, first Preakness. I haven't been to the Derby yet, so that's on my list to get to next year. So maybe I can do the Triple Crown next year. So we'll see each other there. Preakness Day coverage will air on CNBC from 2 to 4 p.m. on Saturday, and then from 4 to 7:30 on NBC. And it will stream on NBCSports.com and the NBC Sports app and Peacock. And ABR, America's Best Racing, will be live at the Preakness for a pregame show starting at 4 p.m. So you can watch all of that on the America's Best Racing social media channels. And also make sure you check out the cheat sheet for the Preakness with all the info you need on all the horses in this year's Preakness race, which Jonathon and I will administer. Epicenter is the favorites, early voting, Secret Oath. There's a lot of horses to talk about in this race at Pimlico Racecourse in Baltimore, as you mentioned, where you are for Preakness Stakes tomorrow. If you have any questions for Jonathon, make sure you drop them in the comment section. We do take questions throughout the show as well, if you have any specific questions for him. So go ahead and drop those in. We'll get to those as well. But this is your first Preakness, but what makes the Preakness unique?
Well, I mean, obviously it's the middle jewel of the Triple Crown. And unlike this year, most years, there's that kind of built-in excitement of the Derby winner showing up here. Are they going to win here? And are we going to see a Triple Crown attempt 3 weeks from now? Well, as most of you might know, Rich Strike has decided to skip the Preakness, which is kind of bizarre. Doesn't really happen. Skip the Preakness and just go straight to the Belmont. I'm skeptical if he'll actually run the Belmont or not. I don't think you just skip the Preakness to skip the Preakness. We'll see about that. We'll check in 3 weeks and maybe I can feel smart. But that's kind of what's special about it. It's just kind of the excitement and the carryover from the Derby. It's an important race in its own right. There's been some fantastic races. I can watch Rachel Alexandra's Preakness right now on YouTube, and I will immediately begin to cry. It's just that special when she beat the boys back in 2009. And so it's just a special race in its own right, but it is the middle jewel of the Triple Crown.
Well, you did mention that Rich Strike is not running, which is obviously a huge disappointment for fans, but also they won the Derby at 80-1 odds, which was just one of the most incredible Derbies of all time. So what should we be looking for, since we aren't going to see a Triple Crown potential winner in this race? What is unique about this specific race without Rich Strike in it?
Well, I mean, I think the storyline is the horse that ran second to Rich Strike was Epicenter. And the way the race was run, which we'll kind of dive into a little bit, was Epicenter ran the best race. He didn't win, but he ran the best race. And that can happen in racing and horse racing, where the winner isn't always the best horse. There's a lot of different circumstances as far as pace. How fast was the race run early? What were the dynamics? Did a horse get stopped? What is their trouble? Epicenter was pretty close to an unbelievably fast early pace, which is why a horse like Rich Strike was able to win, because the pace was so fast. All the horses that were up close got tired. Rich Strike got a brilliant ride by his jockey and was able to pick up pieces and win the race. So the story to me is about Epicenter, who is probably the best 3-year-old so far in this class. And so you're hoping that he'll go on and win the Preakness. And then you have some excitement leading into the Belmont with Epicenter, and then see what he does for the rest of the year. So I think this is really a story about Epicenter, the Derby runner-up, kind of getting redemption.
Well, so obviously the Rich Strike had incredible odds. It was a very long shot to win. And the payout for the $2 exacta, the top two finishers, paid $4,100, and the trifecta, the top three finishers, paid $30,000, and the superfecta, top four, paid $321,000. So how did that happen? And is there any chance we could see huge payouts like that again in the Preakness?
It happened because the pace meltdown. And will we see that again? No, we won't. Not to get everyone's excitement down here, but I think that there's some horses that in this race that are going to be lower odds that are very likely to win. It's not as chaotic as the Kentucky Derby. There was 20 horses in the Kentucky Derby. There's only 9 horses running in the Preakness. If Epicenter doesn't win, it feels very likely that a horse like Early Voting might win. If Early Voting or Epicenter don't win, it feels very likely the filly Secret Oath might win. And if those 3 don't win, feels likely that maybe a horse like Simplification can win. And all of those horses should be pretty close to single-digit odds. And so you need some pretty crazy 80-1 shots to get those big payouts that you mentioned a couple of moments ago.
Once again, you're watching America's Best Racing Preakness Preview Live. Joy Taylor, Jonathon Kinchen. Preakness coverage will air on CNBC from 2 to 4 p.m. Saturday, and then 4 to 7:30 on NBC and on NBC Sports and the NBC Sports app and Peacock. And you can catch the America's Best Racing live from the Preakness at 4 p.m. on all the social media channels, and check out the cheat sheet as well. Okay, so you just mentioned that this is not as deep of a race, obviously, as the Derby with 20. There's only 9 horses. So who are some of the long shots to include on the tickets?
Yeah, well, look, I think Epicenter is going to win. The way that he ran in that race, with the pace being as fast as it was, he ran extremely well and showed the consistency he had shown all year. But like you mentioned, how do we get paid? Epicenter is going to be a pretty short price. I think there's a horse that's pretty interesting. That's the 2 Creative Minister. It's a horse that ran well Derby weekend for Kenny McPeak in an allowance race. So he wasn't running against Stakes Company, the kind of the top of the line, but he ran very fast that day. He got a fast speed figure. Speed figures very similar to a quarterback rating. The higher, the better. Well, his was high. So I'm hopeful that maybe he can kind of get involved and continue to be improving. These are all young 3-year-old horses. They're lightly raced. But, Creative Minister's only run 3 times. This will be his 4th race. So there's an opportunity for him to continue to get better. And I think that there's a chance he's going to be a pretty nice price, because he's not going to get as much money as some of the other horses that we mentioned. Skippy Longstocking to the outside, another horse that I don't think can win, the 9 horse. I don't think can win, but I do think could pick up some pieces underneath in a trifecta or a superfecta. And then the other angle that I'm going to try to exercise here is I'm going to try to beat the filly Secret Oath. In racing, typically the boys run against the boys, the girls against the girls. But there has been times, like I mentioned at the top with Rachel Alexandra, where the fillies will run against the boys, and it's exciting. The fans get excited about it. Obviously, the ladies get excited about it. And it's just an exciting moment. And often those horses can be a little bit overbet. Rachel Alexandra was never overbet because she's one of the greatest horses of all time. Secret Oath is not one of the greatest horses of all time. She did win the Kentucky Oaks, but she does not have to win this Preakness. And I think they're going to bet her as if she has a better chance than she really does. I'm going to try to beat her in here strictly from a financial standpoint when we're talking about wagering. Like I said, I have Rachel Alexandra tattooed on my arm, so don't come for me. Yeah, I do. She's here somewhere.
I love the fillies. There you go. Well, yeah, you can't argue that if you have her tattooed on you. But yeah, okay. So for you kind of mentioned it just now, but only 6 fillies have ever won the Preakness. Obviously, Rachel Alexander, one of the greatest horses of all time. The last one was Swiss Skydiver in 2020. So you don't think she really has a chance to win this, and then that's where you're putting your money.
No, I don't want to say that she doesn't have a chance. She's very talented, and she's right on the verge of being fast enough. She could continue to take a step forward. She might like the added distance from 1 1/8 miles to 1 3/16 miles. My thing is, from a gambling standpoint, she's simply just going to be a shorter price than she should be. Like, for instance, I love Golden State to win the NBA championship. But if you look at some betting sites, plus 130, I have no interest in them at that price. I think they'll win, but I don't think it's a good betting proposition.
So if you were to bet with a smaller budget, how would you bet for the Preakness, and kind of explain some of the different ways that you can gamble in this race?
Well, I think in a race like this, one of my favorite bets in the Preakness is because there's so many random long shots, and there's usually a pretty trustworthy favorite in the Preakness because these horses are running back in 2 weeks. They're usually in form. They're usually going to show up and run well. One of the things I like to do is try to hit a superfecta, just singling Epicenter on top. So you can play Epicenter with long shots in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th spots. Some of those already mentioned the 2 Creative Minister, the 9 Skippy Longstocking, and then also the 7, which now I'm going to panic and that I'm not going to pronounce it right. The 7 Armagnac is another one that I think is a price you could probably use underneath. So like I said, I'm just going to try to get Secret Oath out of the equation because there's not a lot of horse players and fans that are going to try to hit the superfecta without her.
And to just explain how, if you are a new gambler and new to horse racing and betting, what those different types of bets look like and how you can put them together.
Right. So obviously there's win, place, show. If you win, you need the horse to win. Place, run first or second. Show, first, second, or third. There's the exacta, which is the exact order of finish, first and second place. The trifecta, most people are catching on, is the top three. And then the superfecta would be the top four. Obviously, the more legs there are, the more difficult the bet is to hit, and the higher the price is, and the more you can make. That's why I think the superfecta is kind of fun, because for me, at least in my opinion, the first place is a free square with Epicenter. Then you can kind of fill it in the rest of the way, and you can do that on various advanced deposit wagering. We call them ADWs, Naira bets, Twin Spires, Express Bet, depending on what state you live in. And it can all work out a little bit differently, but those are the top three if you want to get involved, or you can just run down to your local racetrack. One of my favorite pastimes growing up is going down to a racetrack, Lone Star Park in Dallas, Fort Worth, on Triple Crown days. And it's just fun to kind of go, show up, bet your money, and then go home, and you can watch the race on NBC.
Yes. So Preakness coverage will air on CNBC 2 to 4 p.m. Saturday, 4 to 7:30 on NBC, NBCSports.com, NBC Sports app, and Peacock. And of course, you can check out more footage from America's Best Racing live from the Preakness pre-race at 4 p.m. And watch on ABR's social media channels. So here's a question from Marianne. With the high heat index for Friday and Saturday, will Pimlico consider canceling some of the non-stakes undercard races and move the stakes race to later in the evening? They did this 3 years ago when I was at Monmouth Park.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so. Obviously in the summer, it was crazy hot at Monmouth that day. We actually canceled at Saratoga for that Haskell. It was just a crazy heat wave. I know it's going to be warm, but there's precautions. We run all summer in Saratoga when it can get pretty hot. They'll hose the horses down. They'll make shorter post parades. They'll have ice buckets for the grooms to put on the horses. They'll do lots of different things. Maybe they'll shorten the post parades in between. They might make some adjustments, but I wouldn't think there'll be any cancellations or any postponements, as it were.
Also, you can check out America's Best Racing cheat sheet with all the info you need on all the horses in this year's Preakness race. It's going to be hard for me not to pick the filly. I just got to ride with the girls, which you do too, Jonathan, obviously, if you heard. I gotta see this tattoo now. That's some commitment. Epicenter, obviously the favorite. Is there any other one that you find like kind of interesting, not necessarily a long shot, that you feel could be effective in this race?
Yeah, I think early voting, who is the 5 horse, is very interesting. Chad Brown has never won a Kentucky Derby. If you remember, you were here last time. I loved Zandon, who Chad Brown trained. He decided to skip the Derby with early voting. He thought the pace was going to be fast in the race, and it was. Early voting is a horse that likes to be forwardly placed. They decided to skip that and just show up here for the Preakness. They've done that previously. They did it with a horse named Cloud Computing that went on to win the Preakness. My concern with early voting is his style is very similar to Epicenter's, and it's hard sometimes when you feel like one horse is better than the other to try to pick the other one that has the same style. There's no real edge that you can come up with. But for whatever reason, if Epicenter does not fire, I could see early voting getting the job done. He's trained by one of the best trainers in the world, and I think that Epicenter is the horse to beat. But if you wanted to try to be a little contrarian at a shorter price, I think there's nothing wrong with early voting.
So something else that we want to mention for anyone who's going to be in Baltimore this weekend, the Preakness kicks off with a big event Friday at Pimlico Racehorse. So in addition to the races on Friday, there's a Preakness live concert at the track, headlined by Megan Thee Stallion and Lauryn Hill, which I won't be in Baltimore this weekend, but that sounds like a lot of fun. I would be there if I was in Baltimore this weekend. Tickets are still available, and people can get 20% off using promo code ABR20. The same code that can be used for Preakness tickets. So there are links to this and information on America's Best Racing social, but use code ABR20 for 20% off for the tickets. There it is right there. And again, Preakness coverage will begin on CNBC 2 to 4 on Saturday, 4 to 7:30 on NBC, NBCSports.com, the app, and Peacock. And the Preakness show on America's Best Racing will be at 4 p.m. and you can watch that on America's Best Racing's social media channels. So one more time before we let everyone go, obviously Epicenter, the favorite here. What are you recommending for a small budget and then larger budget for this weekend at the Preakness, and where can people go to place these bets?
Yeah, I always tell people, if you're new to the game, you don't have to get too creative on your first dive in. I would bet Epicenter to win. I think he'll actually be a pretty fair price. He might be a little bit better than even money, very similar to the roulette wheel. Should be pretty close to even money. And so if you're hanging out watching the race, it's always nice to see the ball go through the hoop. And I would bet him to win. I wouldn't waste money on him, place or show. I'm just not a real big place or show fan. I think you should just bet it all to win, and if the horse wins, then you're good. If you have a little bit of a bigger budget, I do think the trifecta and the superfecta are opportunities to really make some money. And if you disagree with me about Epicenter winning, then there's really some opportunities. Trifecta and superfecta boxes. It's a very easy way to basically get every combination of the horses. You can pick maybe 3 or 4 horses in a trifecta or superfecta box. And basically it just gives you every combination of those horses in that situation. And there's some opportunities to make some money there. I would recommend doing superfecta boxes all the time, but I do think on a big day like this, it does make a little bit of sense. So, but for me, there's nothing wrong with the good old win bet. And I think that Epicenter is worthy of that wager.
Well, it seems like this is a race set for Epicenter. Obviously, there's a lot of storylines, as you mentioned, early voting and Secret Oath. The filly, will she come out on top? So lots of options for everyone. Make sure you check out the America's Best Racing cheat sheet for all the information. There's breakdowns on all of the horses that we've discussed here. A lot of the notes that Jonathon gave, very easy to follow, and lots of great information on the Preakness, which is this Saturday on CNBC. Cover starts at 2 p.m. there and at 4 on NBC. And make sure that you use the code ABR20 for that concert with Megan Thee Stallion and Lauryn Hill. Are you going to the concert?
Absolutely. Like, I have like a whole Megan Thee Stallion, Lauryn Hill outfit. And my fiance would kill me if I made her come to this race and then not go to the concert. So of course.
Oh yeah, okay, so you're set then. Yeah, you gotta get the hotties out there at the Megan Thee Stallion concert. That's gonna be amazing. Pimlico Racecourse in Baltimore, Maryland this weekend. Again, you're watching America's Best Racing Preakness Preview Live Show. Joy Taylor and Jonathon Kinchen. So we hope we gave you lots of information on the race this weekend. Good luck to everyone. Check out the cheat sheet on America's Best Racing. I will be tweeting that out as well. Jonathon, have a great time this weekend. Enjoy the race. Good luck to you. And I won't even tell you not to get too crazy. Have the best time at Megan Thee Stallion and Lauryn Hill.
Well, I'll see you in 3 weeks.
Thanks.
It's America's original sport, and no one covers it better than America'sBestRacing.net. From the sport to the lifestyle, the best races, horses, and destination venues, cocktails, gambling, fashion, and more. America'sBestRacing.net is a sport for you. Live it, love it,